Hello, everybody. My name is Nate. I'm very excited to be talking about the future of mobility, really. Now, should we jump right into the deep end? Azmat, yesterday, actually, we had Theo Blackwell, the Chief Digital Officer for London, tell us all about how open data was brilliant and how you were using open data. So I thought, well, that's a good place to start in terms of how do you make use of open data?
Yeah, I mean, our company and business is based on the availability of open data. In fact, to give London credit, London's been pretty innovative in open data, and I started the company 7 years ago because of the availability of data, and our entire application is based on that. So I think it's great. They've done a great job, and it continues to improve over time. We've seen real-time data and additional things becoming available. They're talking right now about even providing like crowdedness data, and that allows us to help consumers, do a better job of essentially making their journeys and using the city. So I think it's always been a really good decision for them to do so, and we continue to encourage all the cities around the world to do the same.
We're going to talk about electric scooters, Caroline. We have a poll, very handy poll, which I do believe will be appearing in a matter of moments behind me. If you go to the app, Bloomberg, STYT.com, and you'll be able to answer this question. Have you used an e-scooter in Europe or the US? This is a great question. I'm a very big fan of electric scooters. I just bought a new one on Saturday.
Great.
Let's not tell any of law enforcement in London. We'll talk about that. Okay, we're getting there. Caroline, I mean, people know Bird as one of the biggest e-scooter companies in the world, but I think fewer people realize that they are still inexplicably illegal in London, in the UK. So what can you tell us about what you've learned from the cities that have let you operate in them?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, we operate a fleet of free-floating electric vehicles. We operate in around 120 cities globally, but unfortunately right now we can't operate in the UK because of an old law dating back to the 1800s. So we're working very hard to get that changed, but what we've seen is an unprecedented level of adoption in the cities that we do operate in cities across Europe and across the US. We're seeing that when we put a scooter out on the street, it gets used, people love it. It's a new mode of transportation that allows people to get from A to B in a fun, affordable, and sustainable way, and people love that, and we'd love to be able to get to the point that we can operate in markets like London, for example, where every city in the world faces a lot of the same problems: congestion, emissions, air quality, and London's no different. In fact, just getting here today, this morning, was pretty difficult in terms of the traffic and the congestion, and we'd love to be able to be a part of solving that problem.
So, I mean, 38% of people in our poll here say they haven't ever used a scooter and don't plan to. So how do you consider that? How do you convert that 38% of people to want to use one?
Well, I think this is a brand new space. A lot of people don't recognize the vehicle yet, and the space has only been in existence for around 18-20 months. So we were the first operator. We invented the space about 20 months ago. And I think, as with any new method of transportation, any new technology, it takes a while for people to get used to it. And I think once people see how it works and they have a go, they trial a scooter, and they see how quickly it enables them to get around cities and how affordably, and as I said, it's also pretty fun, which helps. I think that will naturally change, and that's what we have seen in cities that we operate in so far.
And on the bright side, there's more people who would like to try it than people who wouldn't.
This is true. That is very, very true, yeah. And I mean, in a way, you've got an even harder job, Remo. I mean, I describe what you do as like a self-piloting helicopter taxi. How accurate is that description of what you operate?
Not actually that accurate. So first of all, it's piloted. but it's a good try. So, but it is electric, that is very true, and it is a vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. So it actually is a fixed wing aircraft that has almost the best worlds of a helicopter and an aircraft. It has wings, it can fly forward, it can fly 300 kilometers, all on a single charge of electricity. And that, because it's a piloted version, also means it can be certified. It has to be certified like a commercial aircraft. It can fly in today's skies as well. So this could actually, funny enough, be applicable and be used today in London, because along the Thames, you're allowed to fly with this type of aircraft.
And I think, I mean, we have a video in the background here of the craft flying. I mean, this is a prototype system. I mean, how do you get from this demonstration that we've got on video here to actively being used in a city like London?
So this is a full-scale, full-weight prototype aircraft. So everything in there is engineered from the ground up. So every, like the engines, it's basically custom designed. The battery packs is custom designed. The whole structure is custom designed. So first of all, first point is like to make sure that it flies, and clearly we've shown that. And now the next stage is to go through still several years process to get it certified. And then at that point, as soon as it's certified, it can fly, and it will be able to fly in London and hopefully very soon.
I mean, and for Citymapper, this is kind of a great position for you to be in, presumably, because you're dealing with a new mode of transport at this rate almost every year, it seems. You know, at one point it was, do you take a train or do you take a bus? Yeah. Now it's scooters, electric bikes, I
believe so. I mean, you asked about open data. A lot of the integrations we're doing right now are a lot of these new modes of mobility. We have Bird integrated in a lot of cities around Europe. Paris is a great example. In London, I believe we have you just on the park.
Yes, we have a small private lounge.
And we're waiting to see. We're hoping to see that regulation allows more here. But if you look at a lot of you take our app and look at a lot of the cities around Europe, you'll notice we have so many new players. Scooters, mopeds, and it feels like even in micromobility, cycles, electric cycles, there's just so much happening, there's so much more to come, and we haven't even started looking at helicopter taxis to the airport or anything yet. So it's exciting, and we really love the fact that we can help our users choose between all these different choices, because it's fundamentally changing a lot of the mathematics of a city. You have a certain A to B commute, you may think that it's half an hour on public transport, you suddenly find out that it's 15 minutes on a scooter, and then perhaps some of the people there who say they never want to use a scooter say, wait, this is actually a pretty good price, time, opportunity, and they want to consider it. So we really hope that we can help promote services, and we think public transport is also still the fundamental infrastructure of a city, and everything has to complement it. So we also think is exciting about like scooters and cycles and micromobility is that they can be multimodal. So you will have some people who have limited access to transportation who suddenly they can take a scooter to a tube station, and they find that is actually an efficient commute for them. So we're doing multimodal routing, integrating all the players in, and we think it's going to be an exciting few years as we continue to do that, and we're excited to see all the different new modes of transport that come and participate in the city.
Now, I mean, you have also trialed your own hardware, essentially. You had a bus service for a while, which I heard today even you've decided to stop doing. If you don't mind me asking, why?
Yeah,
what went wrong there?
Sure, of course. We have announced that we're shutting down Citymapper Ride, and we're going to focus on Citymapper Pass, which is on the business side. Apart from that, we're going to continue doing everything we do on the app and all our integrations and routing and data. When we started doing this, we really thought there was an opportunity to reinvent the bus. We felt that this was a category which had a great opportunity, and I think when you think about the level of utilization that public transport can provide in a city, we still see that as a fundamental way for people to move around the city. We wanted to participate in that. And it's unfortunate that we haven't been able to, and I think it's easy to blame regulation because it's hard to do so, but there's a lot of reasons why we decided that it would be better for us to focus on what we're doing with Pass. And one of the reasons also is now we can focus on helping partners. we're not biased. We can just be a great mobility platform and focus on what we do best, with routing and data and giving users the best information without any bias. And also organizationally, it's much easier to work on the product and work on ticketing without having to run operations. So we're very sad about it, but we think it's best for the future, and it'll allow us to continue to work on our mission.
So your idea is somebody would come to London via train, maybe they take part of that journey on a scooter, and then they need to get a bit further, so they jump in a vertical takeoff and landing craft, land somewhere, and then get a taxi somewhere else. The idea is that's the one-stop shop. You can do all that, but in order to do that, you've got to integrate with everybody.
Yeah, we're seeing these trends. In cities like London, people do not want to own a car. They don't want to necessarily own even infrastructure of any type. They want to be able to be multimodal. And that means it's getting very complicated. You've got many choices. So we want to help make those happen. And additionally, the choices can also be multimodal. And if you make that easy to understand, easy to pay for, easy to access, then you can improve the accessibility of the city. So this is where we hope we can continue to play a part.
So Caroline, Bird has raised hundreds of millions of dollars at multi-billion-dollar valuations, we've reported. And yet I'm pretty sure I have food in my cupboard at home that is older than the company. How exactly has this exploded so quickly and caught on in so many parts of the world?
I think it just comes down to the fact that it's a huge part of solving this problem that we're experiencing in cities. I mean, to the point about needing to change the infrastructure of cities and having all of these kind of multimodal solutions fit together. Currently, our cities are at a breaking point in terms of our ability to get around, and it's getting worse. The average speed of a car in London right now is just over 6 miles an hour. That's almost walking pace.
How fast do your scooters go?
It depends on the city, so we do cap the speed. So in Paris, for example, it's 20 kilometers per hour, but we agree that on a city-by-city basis. But when you look at how big the problem is and how urgent it is for us to fix that problem, and then when you look at how something like an e-scooter and other modes of mobility as well can be a part of solving that problem. There are parts of every city that make it very difficult to get from A to B. So there's some examples in London. So we operate a small private land trial in the Olympic Park near Stratford. It's actually quite a long distance from Stratford train station to where the office buildings at Here East are. That's a perfect example of where you can take the tube, you can take public transportation to Stratford station, and then hop on a Bird from there to your office. And guess what? If that doesn't exist, otherwise people are going to drive a car all the way because they're probably not going to get off the tube and then pick up a taxi from there or drive to the tube station. And so it just comes down to how important it is to solve the problem and how easy and affordable a solution we're offering. And that's why I think when we launch in new cities and when we put new scooters out on the streets, we do see an unprecedented level of adoption.
I'm going to move on in a second and ask about landing infrastructure, which is not a conversation that I've had with anybody in the past. But just before I do, one of the things that I find very interesting about what Bird and other companies in that space have learned very, very quickly is that really to be a viable business long term, you need to be building your own hardware. And you're going to be selling the hardware that you make as well. How quickly did you learn that essentially buying off the shelf scooters was just not viable long term?
Very quickly. So we are an asset-heavy business, and the quality of the vehicle that you're operating is extremely important in terms of the lifetime of the vehicle, in terms of the durability of the vehicle. A lot of retail models are not designed to live outside on the street. They're designed for someone to take them home
What's the average
day.
lifespan at the moment?
Depends on the model you're looking at. So with some of the retail models that We no longer operate, so we're operating with our own bespoke scooters. It's relatively short. With our bespoke scooters, it's around a year currently.
Okay,
with our
what's relatively short? Like I've heard sometimes a month, 6 weeks.
So I can't comment on every scooter model for every person, or sorry, for every business, but could be a matter of months.
Matter of months, okay. You have a different problem facing you in that you obviously need a safe place to land a vehicle and obviously a safe place for people to board one and take off. Given how congested and tight certain cities are, particularly in London, for example, how do you factor that in other than having more helicopter pads on the top of buildings?
Look, I think there's two things you got to differentiate. Are we going to be a 2-kilometer type of solution? Definitely not. So I think that changes sort of your perspective of how many of these landing pads you need in a city like London. And it may be only 5, it may be 10, it may be 15, and in that sort of order, but not hundreds. And then when you actually look at like how much space you essentially need the size of a helipad and a few parking positions, and that's your sort of entry point in creating that. And by the way, that already exists. There's already several in London. There's actually thousands across Europe. So there's about 20,000 different locations today where you can connect different places.
But are these ones that you would be able to use, or are these, these are privately owned and operated pads for?
So it's twofold. I think where we differentiate is because we can fly 300 kilometers. That also means we can really create different connectivity between different places. Actually, almost like regional connectivity between cities, between communities that are today not connected. And then on top of that, we're going to be working, and we're already having a lot of inbound from a number of cities, government, states to actually work with them on saying like, where do you actually build an additional pad? I mean, the investment cost is at the point where private institutions can actually pay for it. So you're talking about €1 million to build a pad that can probably have a throughput of probably 500,000 to 1 million people per year. And the way that the authorities think about it is, again, multimodal is a very good point. Is like, and the way we're thinking about it is, let's put them where it connects well with other types of infrastructure, be that where there's other cars to go on, or there's underground or train links, and then really looking at how does it integrate into the wider fabric of a city.
Okay. And what sort of time scale are you currently working on in terms of these being out in the street, or in the air, I should say?
2025. We are very, very confident it's going to be actually a reality in a number of different cities around the world. And by that we mean not just one aircraft. One aircraft doesn't really help you very much, or 5, but actually really being a number of different connections in those cities where you really start seeing the impact, where the way we're going to be thinking about where are the biggest pain points in the city. We don't need to go and compete with Crossrail. Hopefully it's going to be here soon, right? But there's lots of other places and lots of other connectivity you can resolve in London and in the southern England region. We can connect central London to Manchester and everything in between. So the way we're thinking about that is it's a much bigger lens.
I mean, in a way, it makes more sense that a vehicle like the one you've developed, would be easier to deploy in a city than literally tunneling underneath a city that already has plenty of tunnels and problems. But you're doing something that the likes of Boeing and NASA and all these companies that have been working on this stuff for years and years and years haven't done or haven't been able to do. So what has changed? What made this possible?
It's an incredible confluence of 3 different factors. Ultimately, it's like one, it's battery technology, having gotten to that point where the density of the batteries, and we're talking today's batteries in the ranges that we're talking about. So that is one. The computing power is the other, and the last thing is you need to also have a few great founders that come together and have a bright idea, that look at various different architectures. There's of course different ways how you can build these types of crafts. You can use more like multi-copter type of crafts, or you use transition propulsion electronics to build an aircraft that has jet engine technology at the base of it and can transition into an aircraft. So bringing those things together is of course a confluence of a number of different factors.
I'm going to come back to you, Azmat, in just a moment. We've got another poll that I'd like to do. Now we've established all of these new types of transportation. So if you pull out the app, and the question is, which emerging form of mobility most interests you? We've got a few choices. e-scooter, e-bike, self-driving taxi, private helicopter, / vertical takeoff vehicle, or none of the above. I'm happy with cars and buses. So at the moment, it's a pretty fair balance between. No, I mean, you can see it in front of you. Why I'm turning around, it's right there. Okay, so I mean, it seems that people are generally excited by these new forms of transport. 7% don't seem to care about any of them. So that's a good number. That's more encouraging than the last one we did. But your job, Azmat, really is you're the facilitator of this, right? Like, you're the glue that holds these guys together. How do you compete with the likes of Google and Microsoft and Apple, these guys who are doing enormous mapping projects, and they're trying to integrate as much data as they can into their apps in order to sell hardware? How do you compete with that?
Thanks. I think we don't really think of it in terms of competition to an extent. What they have is a map layer. What we try and do is more the transport and mobility layer on top of it. And to be fair, I think the player that does the best job and has been doing it for a really long time is Google. It tends to be what people will use even for transit. So you could say that we are almost like complementary with Google Maps, but more competitive with Google Transit. And when we think about how we approach it, we focus on being really excellent in a few places, because when you look at mobility data, a lot of what you work with public transport is actually very complicated. And so we find that if you really want to do a good job and satisfy commuters who have very high standards, you have to do an incredible job of keeping the data fixed. And so we have an entire data factory that focuses on this. And in Google, I think, on the meanwhile, tries to focus on doing a decent job all over the world. But we focus on a few places and go really deep. So you can just use our application and see the amount of data like carriages, exits, travel time, routing, everything that we do in order to get that exactly right. And now, we're going a step further by trying to integrate, ticketing into that experience as well. So we mentioned shutting down what we're doing on transportation is because we can focus on pass. Right. And now Londoners can use our app to essentially subscribe to transportation. One is public transportation, one of the packages, and the other package that's exciting is public plus private transportation, where we want to offer users the idea of you're subscribing to mobility. So you care about A to B. You may not care about just having access to one thing. You want to have access to mobility in general, and we want to be able to partner with other companies in order to provide that to you. And so when we go deeper on ticketing, build a better integrated experience with the app, we think we're at the forefront of defining what the space will be on mobile.
And that's how you've sort of answered my next question, which is, I mean, this is the future of your business, right? This is how you see yourself making money. It's subscription, which we've seen, changing the industry, software as a service, and we've seen tons of companies completely pivot their business models to be all around subscriptions, recurring revenue. Is that what you see as the future of Citymapper? Is people paying every month, every year, or however often?
Yes, completely. We're completely focused on this, and we will do so by providing a great experience and solution for users. I mean, the app will remain free for a lot of users, and for some of them, what we offer on the subscription side is going to make sense. But what's really exciting to us is that what we're trying to do is to help actually make the entire thing easier to use. We still think public transport is complicated. Pricing is complicated. People don't know what they're spending. They don't know how much to spend. They have no sense of it. And now that there's more private transport modes, which is great, it is good, but it also adds to the complexity and the confusion. And we want to just simplify that for users and say, you know what, we're going to just make this easier for you. So we've done that with routing, and now we want to do that with the entire pricing, understanding how things cost, understanding how you can use them. And we want to help partners also sell that to users, because I think some users are also a bit confused with everything and want to understand exactly how things work and how to do a good job at it. So yes, this is our future, and this is what we're focused on.
And what's the long-term plan? Do you see an IPO? Do you see yourself being acquired? Has Google come forward yet?
An IPO, that would be fun. But right now, we just started our business, so it might be a bit early. I think we might have to do quite a lot more before we get to that state, but hopefully one day we'll get there.
IPO next year, maybe.
Yeah, maybe a little longer than that.
A little longer than next year, okay. Caroline, one of the things that I've also found very fascinating about what's happening in the scooter industry is just how many players there are out there. There has been a lot of talk of consolidation between companies because it's just, the access to capital is just not going to be there for every single one of the businesses, particularly across Europe, that want to succeed, to be able to succeed. How do you see your role in that? Like, do you see yourselves wanting to snap up some of these smaller players, or do you just want to dominate the landscape?
So all of these small players that you're seeing popping up, and there are a lot of them now, go to that point about there being demand for this and this being, a core part of what solves the problem that we're facing in cities, where we see our part in that. So we actually have a part of the business now called Bird Platform, where we partner with any potential scooter operator. So if you're an entrepreneur and you want to start your own scooter business, you can partner with us. You can launch your own scooter business. Effectively, in theory, in any city in the world, we'll give you our own bespoke scooters. So you can have we'll sell you a Bird 1 at cost. So Bird 1 is our second generation of bespoke scooter.
How much do they cost?
They're a few $100s. Okay. So we'll sell you one of those at cost, or as many of those as you want to take for your city. And we'll plug you into our technology and our infrastructure, and you benefit from our know-how. And as you mentioned earlier, from what are the most advanced scooters in the world right now. And so we want to give entrepreneurs an opportunity to get into the space, and we want to be able to support that. So we're actually really excited about that as kind of the next step in this e-scooter world.
Is there any reason why someone couldn't launch that sort of white label product and then you see the data and think, actually, that's doing really well, let's not do that anymore and launch into it ourselves? Or is it more a case of if more of these companies are doing well, then that's good for Bird?
I think if more of these companies are doing well, then it's good for Bird. I think the bottom line is you do need the best scooter that you possibly can have, and right now that's the Bird 1.
Okay. Remo, what's your ultimate long-term ambition here? I mean, you've got this one craft. Do you see larger crafts, multiple, that hold many people, or smaller ones that people can just pilot themselves? Like, what's the 20-year vision, 30-year vision?
Ultimately, the vision is that anybody can fly anywhere, anytime. And for that, the number one thing is that it's going to be affordable. So we're talking about a world where it's almost going to reach the same cost as driving in a car. And even at launch, what's fascinating about the model is the operating costs are essentially similar to an electric car. Of course, you have a pilot is a bit more expensive, but you also fly at 300 kilometers per hour. But it means you can offer a journey JFK to Manhattan for $70. So actually, from day one, we can offer tickets to people at the price of the next best transport alternative. So shortened distance, that's a taxi. Longer distance, that's flying economy class. And I think taking that forward, the vision is, then when you replicate that and you create an entire network, you can really create a new form of a transportation network that is comparable to other modes, be that cars, be that trains, and we can work and supplement potentially what's already there and creating new nodes or supplement or increasing those capacities where they're needed.
Well, in the last 90 seconds that we've got, I'm going to throw a couple of rapid-fire questions that have come in from the audience. One of them really caught my eye. Is a Nimbus 3000, which for those of you who haven't seen Harry Potter, is a broomstick, a sci-fi or potential reality? So somewhere between what you do and what you do, made available through what you do.
The Bird 1 is our Nimbus 3000, so
okay.
We're pretty proud of that.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm lost.
Okay, fine. Next one, mobility and the elderly. Is that an opportunity?
I think mobility has to be accessible for everyone. Going back to this point about having a multimodal world that is accessible, I think that's very, very important when you're looking at any of these new alternative methods of transportation.
I've never seen a pensioner on a scooter yet. But
I have many times.
Have you?
Of course, yeah.
Oh, okay. I suppose it's because I live in London.
If you can stand, you can scoot.
Yeah, okay. And finally, in the last 30 seconds we have, what should we have here? How did you guys travel here today?
I walked. We had a meeting five minutes away from here.
Legs.
So.
We don't need
And all the
steering
roads were closed. I think there was a protest outside.
wheels. Oh, right, okay. Hope that wasn't our fault.
I took the Jubilee and I got wet in the rain because I didn't carry an umbrella.
I took the tube.
The tube.
Efficiency first.
Efficiency, okay, yeah. In the future, we will not need steering wheels and we will not need legs. That's a good time to end on. Let's use our legs and stand up. Thank you to all my guests.
Thank you.
Thank you.